Alright. I'm going to talk for a second about cool compliments that writers get sometimes. The coolest compliment I ever got as a writer is, "You're not allowed to write about that." And the reason that was cool was because I got it in relation to this story that I wrote about some people. Basically, all that happened in it is a couple of people rode a cart over a mountain when it was snowy, and at the other end there was a dragon. So that was the surprise. It wasn't very original or interesting in terms of like how a story ought to go or what would be cool to follow as a character. But the reason that I always kind of ponder on it is because when I got people to read it, when it got to sit in front of some folks and they said to me what they thought of it, the way that they responded is they said, "Were you cold when you were writing this? Because while I was reading this, I was freezing." And that, in some ways, is among the cooler things that I could have heard as a writer. Because that kind of like making words do that is it's kind of the aim, to create transcendent experiences more than what the words should be able to do. That's kind of the aim. So it's a great compliment. They didn't say not to write about the cold while I was feeling cold, though. That came in a different story. I'll tell you one other one. I wrote a story once where they told me, "Don't write while you're hungry anymore. You're not allowed to write while hungry." Because I wrote a story about some people right. When you feel like you're leaving the submarine when you leave the theater. Yes, that experience, that storytelling experience where you for sure feel like you were somewhere else while you're paying attention to the story. Well, I wrote something about a guy just cooking some stuff. There was some demons that came into it later. That's usually how my stories seem to go, it seems. Something really mundane going on, and then as time passes, the crazy stuff comes in later, and usually too late. I think there's something to learn there. I'll figure out what it is eventually, probably. But they told me I wasn't allowed to write while I was hungry because I was writing about this guy cooking, and the way that he was cooking made everybody else hungry while they were reading. That's a great compliment, being told I'm not allowed to do certain things because the people reading the things that I was writing were empathizing too much. There's probably a limit to that, but I haven't achieved that yet. Just like evilly baking oatmeal cookies. There's an inside joke there. Here's a tip, though. If somebody gives you some oatmeal, you should make cookies out of it. It's pretty much the way that it goes. This all matters because I was meditating a great deal on that story that I wrote a long time ago where people told me that they read it and it made them cold when I was writing the story that I'm going to read for you tonight. This story is meant to feel cold. It's a story about being brave, and I feel like the cold has this effect on us where we have to fight just to be anything while we're in the cold. It's like it's the environment actively trying to beat us down just when it's cold. And so our bodies are just on a cellular level fighting back against the world when it's cold outside. And I think that's very interesting. I think that that's the kind of setting that really it forces me to look at characters and think of them, what makes them brave. and I think bravery is one of the more difficult and important things to write about. There are other times when I might read you a story and you will need to stretch your imagination a little bit in order to kind of like see how the world might be the way that the story is. If you're in Colorado right now, though, then you can kind of like have it's easy for me. I get to cheat tonight. I get to sit and point outside and go, see, it's cold out there. It's cold in my story. Your imagination doesn't have to stretch as hard as it might otherwise. That's fortunate. It's not going to happen all the time. I will say, though, that one of the things that I enjoy doing is I enjoy writing stories that kind of celebrate and sit in the feeling of something like summertime or winter in general. The novel that I have out, City Song, I thought of it as a winter novel. It's the kind of novel that is meant to feel like nights during winter or days during winter, depending on the scene. It's kind of intentional. It's kind of exciting for me, and it's very interesting. I'm working on a novel after that now that's in a different universe entirely, but it's meant to feel like summer. Because it's fun for me to write stories that take place in a different kind of environment than the one that I'm currently living in. I just feel like that's more interesting. I think that that's kind of what is good about writing stories, is you get to go and be somewhere else without being anywhere else. I just think that's exciting. Why not do that? So during winter, I write novels about the summer, and during the summer, I might write a novel about the winter. We'll see. Not entirely certain. That's the future. I'm vamping slightly for a few reasons. First of all, it seems to me as if it takes a little bit of time for some people to get onto the stream. Fine, that's great. I actually think that's good because, this should be kind of a flexible thing. The other reason is that this is one of the shortest stories I've ever written. It's really hard to write short stories. Mark Twain was once criticized for writing such long novels, and he reacted to this criticism about writing such long novels by saying that if you want me to write something shorter, give me more time, because really writing shorter things takes more time, because you can write fewer words, but to write the correct words to tell your story requires hours more editing than to just sort of like give yourself the space to meander. I'm drinking apple cider. I was gonna drink miso broth because I think that's what goes well with this story is miso broth. But I didn't have time to make any miso broth. It's a real shame. Kind of like drinking miso broth. But apple cider is a good way to go. It doesn't have any miso in it, but it's nice and warming. So since this is a short story, I'm giving myself a little bit of a breath to get used to sort of like sitting here, and I get to look out. There's a window over there, and I get to go and look at the sun. Not the sun, the snow. And think about short stories. Short stories. It's not super short. It doesn't qualify as flash fiction. But it is the shortest story I have ever written that I feel like is a complete story. And so I am taking my time to begin, not the least because I think it's artsy. This is an artistic story. I did that entirely intentionally. I don't know where it came from. I like stories that have like they come from the pulp background. It's like I like the idea that eventually my stuff will be disregarded as literary trash. I mean, I love the idea that I've written something artistic and interesting, but it will be cool to me if people in the future love my writing but then dismiss it as not important. Because all of my favorite stuff tends to be dismissed as not important, but it's just as interesting and just as useful. I mean, H.P. Lovecraft is not important, but he's one of the more important writers of our age because everybody you read has read him. in any event. That's kind of the category that I think it would be a lot of fun to fit into at some point. Alright, so I will begin my story. Let's take a deep breath. And we can begin. A fierce cub. Rishi attacked the task with the same focus she attacked everything. As her father's only child, she had an important legacy to uphold. Her father tracked the snowcats, which would be a dangerous job, no matter when or why he did it. In the late winter, snowcats had their cubs, and that was the most dangerous time to track the snowcats, and it was the most important. Rishi's father would track pregnant mothers for days through the blue-gray world full of snow and ice, where in the winter the sun never quite rose. They'd eat caribou jerky and light only the smallest fires, and grit their teeth against the scratching of tomb breath, the spirit of cold wind, and they'd keep as near to the pregnant snow-capped mothers as they could. Every day they risked attracting the ire of the pregnant mothers. That was the trick that made Rishi's father important. He knew how close to get without getting too close. Then, at a time every bit the same as every other moment of the pursuit through the woods, some sign visible to Rishi's father signaled something to him. "Come, Rishi," he said. 2 of the 10 words she'd heard from him for many days. They'd string all their supplies up in a tree and leave behind as much as they could that had a scent. Then they'd begin sneaking through the sleeping spruce trees, all of which Rishi knew kept an eye open only at exciting times like these. All trees approved of times when they might see men the wood burners, the tree choppers, getting killed. The spruce trees half woke from their winter slumber to watch Rishi and her father creep through the snow toward the snowcat's den. Time had come for Rishi's part. Days earlier, she and her father had come to see the snowcat's den, so Rishi knew where it was, though she couldn't see it in the gloom. Crawling on their bellies in the snow, Rishi and her father got nearer. Then, when they had almost got there, Rishi's father reached out and squeezed her arm. The only affectionate sign he ever gave her, and the signal that he would not go any further. From there she went on alone, angrier and more focused than ever. She heard every thud of snow shaking from the needles of the watching spruce trees. She wished the spruce trees would be more polite. Though they did not have eyes she could see, she knew so well that they watched her that she had trouble ignoring them. No wind blew past her, so she could listen closer. And what she heard was snowcat. But she did not hear snowcat mother. She heard, as she knew she would, snowcat cubs. That's how she knew that whatever invisible sign her father had seen had shown him truth. They always did. She never doubted him, although a small part of her wished he would sometimes get it wrong. No time for that thought now. It was cowardly and not useful. She pushed it out of the way, and she swam through the snowdrift. Moving inches, she crept closer to the den. She did not know how long it took. The nighttime did not have measure anyway, so it did not matter. The palest of blue glows started in the east before she reached the den. The morning, such as it was in late winter, broke. That would only be a help to her, and mean little to the snowcat. She, after all, relied more on scent than on sight, and she would be tired after bearing her cubs. Rishi crept to the entrance of the snowcat's den. It was a crevice made by a rock fallen over a hollow, and it was more spacious than many of the tents back in her village. It had no leavings of meals, as you might expect. It was better to keep the smell of your meals far from you. The snowcats knew that. All the den had in it was snowcat. In spite of her fear, which she never admitted to having, Rishi always took a moment to peer at the mother. This one sprawled out on her side at the back of the den. The curve of her rose and fell, a darker darkness in the den. The noise of her breath, though faint, came as more sound than the noise of even fat Girish, the witch of the village, because the snow-cat mother was far vaster than Girish, vaster than the small ponies of the nomads who'd come to trade, although not so vast as the mammoth. In spite of her fear, Rishi wished she could see the snow-cat out in the light, see its thick fur mottled white and black, and its bright eyes, and its movements so like river running in a thaw or the wind in summer grasses. And, wrestling near it, two smaller shapes moved in the darkness. Then came the riskiest part. Rishi's heart pattered in her little chest. From deep in her furs, where it would keep warm next to her skin, she pulled a pouch of oilskin. From the oilskin she pulled a wad of linen. The wad of linen dripped with milk. The smell of it caught the noses of the two wrestling cubs, which was good. It would catch the attention of the mother, too, which was not good. Keeping her hand as steady as she could, Rishi held the milk-sodden cloth toward the cubs. Though they had no doubt recently eaten, they would no doubt be hungry. Snowcats could not get enough to eat sometimes to make enough milk for their cubs. The smell of milk overcame any misgivings the cubs might have about its unexpected source. Both cubs pattered toward her. They both sucked at a corner of the linen. Rishi looked past them at the glint in the dark. The mother snowcat's eyes opened. They looked at Rishi. For the moment they showed nothing but interest. The mother waited, sure in herself that no matter what would happen, she would master the moment. Then Rishi did the stupidest thing anyone who ever saw a snowcat could do. It was her job to do it. She'd done it before. She knew how. It never felt safe. All sneaking abandon, Rishi grabbed the easier of the two cubs. She grabbed it tight, but not so tight she would hurt it. It reacted with surprise, but not violently. She let it keep the milk-sodden linen. Then Rishi bolted. She turned round and ran as fast as her short legs could take her. It would not be fast enough. It had never been fast enough. It would never be fast enough. She had surprise in her favor and nothing else. She had to survive for 20 paces. They felt like the longest 20 paces of her life. The growl of the mother at her heels shook her. The mother's snowcat didn't roar. Rishi didn't warrant anything louder than a growl. The growl shook her enough without being loud. At the spot she knew, Rishi dove into a snowbank. The cat mother's growl just about turned into a purr. She knew that Rishi could not get away now. Then her father lit the line of mammoth fat oil in the snow. They had laid it days earlier, and the snowcat had left it alone because it had been boiled to the point where it didn't smell like food anymore. It just smelled bitter and unhealthy. But it burned. It burned hot. Rishi's father cut the ties that kept the twigs and cones up off the ground, and they fell onto the line of burning oil. They caught fire in a rush, scattering sparks everywhere. Then the snowcat mother roared, more from surprise than from pain. Rishi looked around. The snowcat mother paced behind the line of fire. She did not want to cross it. Fire scared everything except the people of the valley. That was one of the only things they could say about themselves and say it gave them power. Rishi knew spruce trees drew away from the flames, expressing their disgust with their shaking needles. "Come, Rishi," her father said, coming out of the shadows and speaking the 11th and 12th words he had said to her in days, and probably the last. He helped her to her feet. Without another look back, they hurried through the trees back to the camp. The fire would keep the snowcat back for a while, but not for long. When the fire went out, or when the snowcat discovered a way around or over the fire, Rishi and her father wanted to be far along their journey home, far enough that the snowcat could not afford hunting them. Then they would return to the village with this new cub. The villagers would crowd around Rishi and praise her with quick hands as they always did. "Will they let me name this one, do you think?" Rishi asked her father. Her father smiled. He didn't know. Rishi didn't know. For the days of the journey back, what she did know was it would be her job to make sure that the cub got enough milk, and soon would get caribou jerky in shreds. She knew that for at least these days that it took to get back to the village, the cub would have a good mother. Perhaps not a mother with a familiar shape, but a willing one. Like I say, I don't know where that story came from in me, but I like it. I think it's good. It's all about courage. That's my view anyway. I won't tell you about what my stories are about very often. I think it's more interesting to hear what other people think they're about. That's what this one's about. It's about courage. It's from me book, which you can find on Amazon, but I think I've also got links in the video description to getting it. It's a good book of short stories. It's got some good reviews. I like it. I think it was done well. It's okay, Bone Dragon. I don't mind that you're a bit late. I really appreciate all y'all coming and sitting with me sometimes. It's been very gratifying and interesting and pleasant to be able to read me stories to you guys. I like how they turned out, and I like sharing them with people. The book turned out well, as well. Got more stories that are coming out, and I'm gonna continue doing this because, frankly, it's going well, and I'm enjoying myself. So, thanks for your encouragement. Yeah, so thanks for sitting with me. I hope that y'all stay warm and stay brave, and that you get cats to cuddle up with too. Yes, a white snow cub. Mo needs a nice friend. That's right. Next time, the story is a bit longer. I think that the beverage I would suggest to go with it might be mulled wine or water. Yes. So, that was good. Y'all have a pleasant evening, and I really enjoyed your company. Like I say, stay warm, drink well. Talk soon.